What's up? Okay, a couple of people are in. Give me 1 second just to send this out one more time, and then we can get started. All right. Appreciate everyone coming in. Wizards lose to the Toronto Raptors 141-10. I'm Varun Shankar, the Wizards reporter for the Washington Post. This is the post-game live stream from the Everybody Eats podcast. I'm recording live from my mother's home office in Northern Virginia. Man, where do I want to start with this game? Let's start with who the Wizards didn't have, which is a long list. Not that long, actually, but long in the big men category in particular, because Alex Sarr did not play tonight, and then Marvin Bagley did not play tonight either. And you saw the impacts of that all the way through the game. It starts with Tristan Vucevic, who was the third center usually on a two-way contract, has not played much this year, other than some mop-up duty here and there, and maybe a couple minutes in competitive games. But this day, he was asked to start from the beginning, and you kind of saw why the Wizards had not been playing him, because it was a pretty, he looked tentative out there, which is something I've never really thought about Tristan in games before, because he just, I mean, like, he gets in and like he takes a shot attempt within 2 seconds, right? But that was not the case today. And you could see him, especially on defense. And I wonder if this is a function of I'm the only big man, I can't get into foul trouble, and how that impacts him, because he looked pretty tentative contesting shots. I don't think that's a huge difference from how he plays normally, just because I do think that this is a player that, I don't know, his defense is a ways away. I think it's fair to say. Can everyone hear me okay, by the way? Just want to make sure. Think I'm good. All right. We'll assume I am. If not, please send a message in the chat. Yeah, Jose Gonzalez says Vucevic is not an NBA caliber defender, in my opinion. And that has been true throughout his career. And it was true tonight. And you're seeing why, even though he's such a dynamic player on offense, you could see what impact he can have as a shooter, but also someone who can pump fake and then get inside. It just didn't show to that part of his game. Actually didn't show up today as much as other. There was an early drive where he kind of goes in, and I thought he could have kicked it out to Middleton, but he doesn't. Goes inside, doesn't get the call, and then, it's a missed shot, and he was fine today. And this is just who Tristan Vucevic is at this point in his career. He was a second round pick. He is a player who was known to have defensive liabilities, and he has been that throughout his career. It has not been dramatically better. There were a couple nice moments for him on defense where he came over as a help defender, and along with the player guarding the ball, was able to impact the shot to a certain degree. But there were a lot of moments where he just looked kind of lost out there. And one thing I found interesting is that he very often finds himself just like caught in no man's land, committing between nobody and not actually denying anything. I mean, there was that one play early in the first quarter, I think it was still in his first stint, where a pass from, I want to say Scotty Barnes, goes into Jakob Poeltl, and it just goes right over Vucevic's head because he's not looking the right way. And he just seems all over the place all the time. So that was an issue. And then the Wizards went away from Vucevic. They tried to play small. The Raptors did not adjust by playing small, and they beat up Washington, who is not a good rebounding team, as you all know, even on a good day. And then this was definitely not a good day because of how shorthanded they were. They were playing small. Justin Champagnie had no shot. And you saw the downstream effects and how guys like Sandro Mamushkaveli for the Raptors was able to get downhill and really punish Blues. I think he finished with 24 points, which, it's Sandro Mamushkaveli. What else stood out to me? Blanche Koulibaly shot 1 for 6 from the field and didn't do much otherwise, but I kind of liked his game. He was aggressive starting out early. He got downhill again and again. He got to the free throw line for 8 free throw attempts, I want to say. And it was a good example of how, even though the 3-point shot did not fall, he took 5 of them. He missed all 5. He was at 35% before tonight. I'm sure that's going to go down a decent amount just because it's still a small sample size. But one thing that already looks different than what Bilal looked like late last season when the 3-pointer was not falling is that he looks so much more decisive with the ball in his hands. Last year, he just felt conflicted and unsure of everything he was doing. And that was not the case at all today, because he caught it, he got downhill, and there were usually good results when that happened. There were also that most of his best moments came when he was playing alongside Keyshawn George or someone else who could play with the ball a lot. And when he was asked to be the primary creator, you saw him struggle. And I think that's something where that was a goal the Wizards had for him last season, and you saw them move away from it as he started to struggle more and more. I am curious if, as he gets more acclimated to the offense, if you see more and more of him getting to play essentially as a point guard for a Wizards team that has been running with, obviously, CJ McCollum's been handling the ball a lot. Keyshawn George has been handling the ball a lot. I wonder if Koulibaly gets into a point where he's initiating more actions. Let's see. I'm going through the chat now. Think I don't know that the Wizards roster has more quit in it. I think it's a younger team at points than it was last year, just because there's more young players, more recent draft picks, and I wonder if some of them thought coming into the season that it might be a little different than it was a year ago, and you're seeing that some of the good vibes that came from training camp evaporated pretty early because of this extended losing streak they've been on. But on the other hand, I mean, I thought the Brooklyn game was legitimately concerning, and you could hear how concerning it was based on how everyone with the team reacted afterward. They came out against Minnesota and they went down by a lot, but they did respond really well. And I like the fight and energy they showed. Even early today in this game, I thought that their defense was really good to start. I thought Cam Whitmore was really active in passing lanes. I thought Bilal Coulibaly was active in passing lanes. Corey Kispert was pretty active in passing lanes. And they were, disrupting the Raptors and forcing them into tough shots. And then they couldn't hit any threes of their own. The Wizards couldn't, and from there things just kind of went downstream. Without someone to collapse the defense, it seems like teams have loaded up on all the middle pick and rolls and DHOs. I think that's probably true. The Wizards don't have someone who is great at getting downhill. I would say that's why Koulibaly is so important because I think he can do that pretty well in a way that no one else on the team can. Even Keyshawn George is more of a patient ball handler, and he usually needs a screen to get an advantage. But someone who can get downhill, Koulibaly can be really helpful there. But that's an area where they would love to get that person in the draft next year. Darren Peterson is someone who's really good at that, for example. Let's see what else. Yeah, third and fourth quarter was really tough. It was a poor showing on the rebounding end. I think again, some of that is just structural, to be honest. You don't have a big man who's able to play extended minutes with Vucevic out there and Sar and Bagley out, and you're just not going to get rebounds in that situation. Um, I think the hope for Brian Keefe, and we've seen him do this a couple times before by going small, is to get the other team to adjust out. But usually, when you're doing that, you want to try and expose whoever the big man on the court for the other team is. And you saw the Raptors in the second. So in the first half, if you look at their big man rotation, Pirtle plays 13 minutes. Sandro Mamishkaveli plays about 11 minutes. In the second half, yeah, Pirtle plays just 6 minutes, and then Mamu plays 10 minutes, and you could see that Mamu is a little more mobile as a big man on the perimeter, and that allowed the Wizards to the Wizards could have taken advantage of it in some ways by attacking Mamu, and they didn't do that often enough. There were a couple of times where you would see a smaller guy get switched onto Mamu as an offensive player, or Mamu got switched onto the offensive player, I should say. And you'd think that the Wizards would look at that as an opportunity to attack and get downhill against a theoretically slower, lumbering big man. That should be a mismatch for the Wizards, but they very rarely took that opportunity. There was one play in particular, I remember, where Bub and Trey ran a pick and roll, and Bub had Mamu on him, and he gave it to Trey. And, Trey had a really nice game today. I thought the shooting showed up again. And you're seeing how much of a weapon he can be in transition and how much of a weapon he can be in just being aggressive with his shot. But I thought that was a situation where Bub should have attacked. Let's see. Kevin Burke has a question. At this stage, 13 straight losses. I have two questions. Are the players' attitudes okay, especially young prospects? What value do CJ and Chris bring at this point? I think two is influencing one. I mean, a lot of what we heard about that players only meeting is that it was the veterans who were leading the way. Specifically, CJ McCollum was leading the way, along with, I think, Marvin Bagley was another key voice in the locker room that day. And I do think that overall, the Wizards' young players have done well to keep their dispositions upbeat enough during a really tough stretch for them. However, it's a long season. It wears on them, and you're seeing that. I You want them to be upset after losses. These guys are competitors, and you want them to be competitors. You want them to feel the sting of defeat. What you don't want is them to become disillusioned with the process of day to day coming in, trying to improve, and knowing that it might not actually show up in the scoreboard. That is a tough job. That is where Brian Keefe's job gets really difficult, and I think he's done a pretty good job of keeping everyone motivated so far. You see, the Wizards even late in today's game, they were pretty engaged on the bench, and uh, there have been moments this season where you could see them kind of slipping in that regard a bit. But I think that's honestly one of the reasons why I think you saw the players only meeting called is because they wanted to make sure that energy kept up for the rest of the season, and you hope that once there was that one wake up call, it doesn't need to happen again and again and again. What else do I want to talk about? Well, let's talk about Keyshawn George, who had a pretty quiet game because Keyshawn has had a very good start to the season. I still maintain that he is someone who's a little overtaxed in the offensive role the Wizards envision for him. If you look at it right now, he's got an astronomical usage rate. Pulling up cleaning glass right now. This does not include tonight's game, but he's at a 24% usage rate. Here are some players who are around him in that area. Right below him is Jimmy Butler and Anthony Simons. Right above him is Franz Wagner, Norman Powell, and Kevin Durant. So he is being asked to carry a immense offensive load for these young Wizards. And I think that if this Wizards team ever does turn the corner and becomes a better team and becomes a team that's like in a very competitive situation, it is going to be a spot where Keyshawn George's role gets scaled down. And that is good for him because he's still going to be able to do a lot of stuff he's doing now. He's just going to be asked to do it in a much less expansive role and with less impactful defenders going against him. Exactly. That's exactly what Jose Gonzalez says. He's punching above his weight with his usage rate. He's going to look so much better when his role is scaled down to a secondary ball handler role. Exactly right. I think that is, I think that is a place that you'll see him get better at it as the years go on. But I mean, tonight the turnover problem is real. He was at 14.4% of his possessions went to a the 14.4% of his possessions that he used led to a turnover last season. That's up to 18.2% this year. That's third percentile among big men or among wings, I should say. And it's something that he has to get better at. And you see some of the turnovers are a function of I think turnovers where he's trying to make the right play. He's trying to, get a good pass out to someone. Uh, those are fine, in my opinion. The turnovers that you don't want are ones where he gets picked or you see him try and make a pass that's just not there at all. You see this sometimes with the Wizards where they maybe recognize a mismatch, but they don't have the right angle to make the pass, or maybe it's just way too small of a window to try to fit the pass into, and they try and do so again and again. And that's something where you've seen them get in trouble with again and again. So that's something where it has been a recurrent issue for Keyshawn throughout his career. I think some of it is structural, just in terms of what the Wizards ask him to do. I think some of it is also his over aggressiveness at times as a player. What else stood out to me from this game? Let's talk about Trey Johnson a little bit more. I don't want to brush over what he looked like because it was his first double digit scoring game, or his first game. What's he been at the last couple games? Let's pull that up. He's been at double digits, but it's the highest game he's had scoring wise since November 7th against Cleveland. He had 14 points tonight. He had 19 points then. I think that you saw him look most comfortable shooting the three, honestly, and that makes a lot of sense. That's what he has done really well for most of his career. I think one thing that was encouraging for me was seeing that he was able to get his off the dribble game going a little bit more than he did in the first few games. He's been really, really perimeter oriented as far as his shot selection goes. And so today you saw him weaponize that shooting, get guys to come out to him, and then take them inside. Because if you look at it, this is not including tonight's game, but just 8% of his field goal attempts, which is a second percentile among combo guards, has come at the rim for cleaning the glass. 32% of his shots are coming in short mid range, and 50% of his shots are coming on 3-pointers. That's fine. I'm honestly not upset with him taking that many threes. He is that good of a shooter that you want him to have that volume. I do think that some of his 3-pointers, I don't know. I've been a little mixed on the way the Wizards are using him. I like that they're giving him on-ball opportunities because you want him to have Because one thing that I love so much about Trey Johnson is that he's not just someone who is like a Kyle Korver shoot off the catch guy. He's someone who's really good at shooting off the dribble. And so you want to put the ball in his hands and let him try and attack that and get those reps trying to penetrate a defense. On the other hand, I would like to see him get some of those more traditional shooters actions, coming off flares, coming off pin downs, having stagger sets run for him, running floppy, so I'm curious what they can do with that. I do think that one place I would like to see him get better at is when the Wizards use him as a screener. He is way too eager to get out of there, and it turns into less of a screen and then just kind of like a flyby where he like pauses for a second near the ball handler's defender and then just flies out to the perimeter. Make some real contact. Make them actually have to think about what this will look like and what this action could be rather than bailing them out before they've even been tested as a defense, because him as a shooter should be a 5 alarm fire for other teams. And you want to see how the downstream effects of that could lead to open opportunities for him and for other players. Yeah, agreed, Jose Gonzalez. You talk about how Trey had some opportunities to seek being aggressive. There were opportunities when Pirtle or Mamu got switched on to him. He did not attack. The Wizards in general did not attack the big men as much. And I think that if you're Brian Keefe and you want to play small, you have to do everything within your power to go 5 out and then have people attack inside. And you just didn't see the Wizards do that enough tonight and didn't see them pick at the Raptors big men enough tonight. Foot speed is not, it never makes no sense. Asks, is foot speed something that can be improved over time? Asking for both Will Riley and Trey. I think it probably is something that can be improved in time. Lateral agility is probably something that can be improved in time just by strengthening muscles in various parts of the lower body. There are tons of biomechanic experts that these players work with who are tasked with doing that. I don't know if foot speed in particular is something you can improve on, but I do think that both Will Riley and Trey, I don't think either one of them is going to become an elite defender ever, to be quite honest. I don't think they have the athletic tools to do so. However, and this was something that Oklahoma City Thunder coach Mark Daigneault said in his pregame press conference the Wizards played there earlier this season. And he was talking about some of their less heralded defenders. Obviously, you've got players like Lou Dort and Alex Caruso and Casey Wallace who are like top of the line defenders. But there's also players like Aaron Wiggins or Isaiah Joe who are just fine on defense. And he was talking about like it is so important that they are just fine, that they are a 6 out of 10 rather than a 2 out of 10, because that's one less spot for a defense to pick at. Or if they are picking at it, it's not a blatant weakness that negates everything else you're doing on the offensive end. So being even an okay defender, which I think both Will Riley and Trey Johnson should be able to get to. Will Riley's pretty big. He's tall. He's got switchability in that aspect. Trey Johnson is a big player for a guard. He's got a massive plus wingspan. I think he's 6'5", but if I'm looking up his Tankathon page, which is basically bookmarked for me at this point, he's 6'6", but he's got a 6'10.25" wingspan. Like, I think he's going to be okay on the defensive end. And both those guys are players who care about that. So I'm not too concerned about them long-term as defenders. I do think that you have seen that for both of them, it's been a struggle. I did like, there was a nice play for Will Riley where Scotty Barnes tried to take him into the post and is bullying him, but Riley's getting knocked back, but he stays in pretty decent position and he forces a pretty difficult shot. Stevie Daniels asks, do you worry about the collective lack of athleticism, speed, strength, and height for long term? With SAR, it's bad. Without Abysmal, the best teams basically no weak links. That's the thing. The best teams have basically no weak links. The Wizards have a lot of weak links right now, but if you look at it, most of their weak links are either young players who the organization expects to develop into players who won't be weak links moving forward. There's some level of projection involved with that, but these are young players. Trey Johnson's 19 years old. There's obviously projection involved. Or they're players like CJ McCollum, Chris Middleton, who aren't going to be here when the team is actually trying to win a lot of games. And so there are weak links on the roster right now, and I think you're seeing some of the struggles the Wizards are having defensively because of that. But I do think that if you look at most of the players this front office has drafted, I mean, Bilal Coulibaly is a top of the line athlete. He's not like there are 15 players, I would say, in the NBA are better athletes than him, but after that, he is an absolute like unbelievable athlete. You see that side to side movement, the way that he makes NBA defenders just stop because of how fast he's moving. Alex Sarr is a freak athlete because of his wingspan, his combination of size and agility and fluidity in movement. And then there is a couple of guys beneath them. I look at Keyshawn George as someone whose size should make him good. And there's three guys who I think I would lump all together, which is Bub Carrington, Trey Johnson, and Will Riley as defenders because those are all young players who have yet to be consistent on that end. And you could see some pretty clear weaknesses, and none of them are like top of the line athletes. But I do think that each of them has enough positional size and enough positional wingspan where they should not be glaring weaknesses on that end. Jose Gonzalez says that Trey had a stretch in the Wolves game where he fights over a screen, stood up calmly on a drive, afterward came in a pick and roll rep and hit a mid-range jumper for go. But yeah, that's exactly what you want to see. He is someone who I do think is going to be a two-way player. I don't think he's someone who is going to be limited to being a one-way player. I don't think he's ever going to be an elite defender, but I think he's someone who could definitely be passable on that end. And that's why one thing I've really liked about Trey is that he is a competitor. He is someone who really wants to get in. This is true for Will Riley and Bob Carrington as well, but I see it the most with Trey, where he is trying his hardest to be an active and energetic defender and, trying to make ball handlers uncomfortable. And he just doesn't have the technique or functional athleticism right now to be effective on that end. And that's fine. Rookies are almost never good. Second year players are almost never good on defense, or at least rarely ever good on defense, especially on a team like this that is built to lose in a lot of ways. So, I would say exercise patience with all of them, but I don't look at any of them and say, oh, they are problem defenders. I do think that the Wizards' problems on defense are somewhat functions of having a lot of young players out there, both in terms of the physical development that they need, but also the mental development as far as staying locked into games, rebounding, communicating. Those things are all going to get better as their careers go on, but those have been major issues so far. What Jose Gonzalez asked, what do you think Bub's struggle is right now? He does seem like he's trying to be too much this floor general. A lot of his turnovers seem very avoidable. The turnovers, a lot of them are very avoidable. I mean, I was rewatching some of them are flukes. I mean, there was one in the Dallas game where a pass bounces off his hands and goes in for a backcourt violation. I think what you're seeing with Bub is someone who is being asked to do slightly different things on offense, particularly with an emphasis on getting to the rim, an emphasis on not getting to a mid-range shot unless it is later in the shot clock than he would have been last season. And I think you're seeing him being asked to expand his game. And where you've seen with Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George that expanding the game has made them better players, with Bub, you're seeing the growing pains that come with that. And you're seeing some of the development that happens in NBA games. I think it's still very early in his career. I think he's still very young and there's room to grow, but it has been a struggle definitely so far where he's getting inside and the ball gets knocked away from him too easily. His finishing is just not up to par right now. Some of the turnovers, you could see him predetermining plays at times, I think, where he gets into the paint and you just see him just thinking like, okay, this is a lob, this is a lob, this is a lob. And then he goes up for a lob and he's never made even like a feint to get to the rim. And because of that, the big man's just waiting for the lob. Or there was a couple plays in one of the recent games where he tried the lob pass first and the weak side help had drifted in. And so the pass was knocked away. Second possession, sorry. Second possession, same kind of play. He, because of the last play, I think he tries to hit the weak side player because he thinks the weak side is going to be sucked into defending a lot, but the weak side is actually staying with the guy in the corner, and so it turns into a turnover. So I think that is a growing pains for a young guard who's being asked to do a lot. Let me take a second to get some water. All right. Bub's turnovers include a lot of passes where he just puts too much zip on a pass. I think that's definitely true. I just think that like sometimes I don't know, he's a young player who's forcing things at times and pressing a little bit at times. So I think you're seeing that. Sorry about that. CV Daniels asked, what does the front office like about Vuk? Is he part of the long-term plan? Looking around the league, he just can't hang. I mean, I think that the Wizards have been pretty clear about what they see with Vucevic and what they need to see with Vucevic, I should say, in that he does not have a full-time NBA contract. He is on a two-way deal. The Wizards signed Marvin Bagley to a backup deal despite having the option to bring back Vucevic, and I think that tells you what they have not liked about Vucevic's game. I mean, he's still a roller coaster on defense, but I do think that they see upside as someone who there aren't that many people who are 7 feet and can shoot the way that Tristan does, and that's obviously going to be mesmerizing. And I mean, it's mesmerizing for me, and so you don't want to give up on that too soon. And, it's something to keep an eye on. It never makes no sense says, on a positive note, I like the Cam Bilal Keyshawn trio. I think that trio, like switchable wings, all of them have some ability to play off the dribble. Cam is a pretty good shooter. Keyshawn is a very good shooter. Bilal is obviously a work in progress as a shooter, but you don't have to destroy your spacing for that group. You know what? Let's take a look and see what that three-man group has been when they're on the court together. I'm going to use Data Ballers three-man group. I wonder if they've been at all good. I don't think this will include today's game. Let's see. Well, this is not working. Let's try this. All leverage. Okay, this is not working. So I'll take a look at that later. But I do think that those are that's a trio where I would like to see more of them. Just because I mean I'll say this for Cam, man, he's looking a lot better of late. I've liked a little bit more of what I've seen from Cam Whitmore. He's getting off the ball a little bit earlier. There are less bad shots. There's still a couple here and there, but you're seeing him, I think, buy a little bit more into the role that he needs to play for this Wizards team rather than try and be a, fill it up box score guy every single night. Yeah, I'm very interested in the net rating of when Keyshawn, Bilal, and Sarr are on the floor. I'm very interested in particularly what their defensive rating together looks like. It is not that good so far, and that's obviously a lot of a small sample size right now still, but that is something I'm very curious about because they are the building blocks for this team. And I'll tell you this, the Wizards care about how they fare in that lineup. Maybe not that lineup in particular, but I'm pretty sure. I know that they care about how the defensive metrics look like with some of their young impact players, and those three are ones who are impact players. All right, I'll take this last question, then we'll wrap it up. Um, Wizards Bulls tomorrow in Chicago, less than a mile from my house. The only game in Chicago for the Wizards this season. I haven't bought tickets yet. I'm a diehard. What two reasons should I waste my money and go rep the Wiz? That is a great question. I would not tell anyone to how to spend their money, but I'll say this: the Wizards are going to. The Wizards are going to have difficult nights this season. That's just the nature of what a severe rebuild at this point in time looks like. And I think that when you're looking at this Washington team, the best reason to look at them is that one of these games upcoming, they're going to break the losing streak, and it's going to feel really good when it happens. And perhaps playing a Chicago team that played tonight, lost tonight, and I think I saw that Montes Buzelis had an ankle thing. I don't know how serious it is, but maybe he's not playing, and you get a chance to see the Wizards win a game, which is very statistically unlikely for someone going to a game over the last 3 seasons at this point. Stevie Daniels asking, I will wrap up actually with this. Does a long-term best version of this team has Bilal at the 2, Key at the 3, and is taller, stronger 4, or even Sarr at the 4 like Chet, and a 5 like Isaiah Hartenstein? You could definitely see that be a potential pairing. I think that it's hard to say just because we're so early in this for the Wizards. I don't know if I could tell you that at some point in time, I think that Keyshawn and Bilal will be two of the wings that the Wizards play when they're trying to win with this core. I do think that Sarr will be one of the big men who's playing. I think that it's going to come down to what look they want to put out there and what other teams are putting out. When you look at Oklahoma City, Hardenstein doesn't play the entire game. Chet plays a lot of time at the 5 himself. Same thing goes for someone like Evan Mobley. And so I think Sarr, a lot of his future will be played at the 5. And I think it's really good that the Wizards have gotten him to buy into playing the 5 early on in his career, because I think it's easier to get someone to go from playing the 5 to playing the 4 rather than the other way around, because it really is a beating on your body. All right. I appreciate your guys' time. I'm going to do this more and more throughout the season, but this was a lot of fun. I will catch you guys later. Thank you so much for tuning into the Everybody Eats live stream post-game show from Wizards-Raptors on Friday, November 21st. I'll talk to you guys soon.